Hi guys, it's me, Dashama. I'm here in Bali and we're coming to the end of our teacher training and a good opportunity to offer this workshop on how to heal back pain and what to do with yoga therapy to alleviate back pain. But I just want to talk about specifically like this whole topic of back pain because it's one of the most commonly requested yoga practices every day. I get people who contact me saying, I have back pain, what should I do? And so it's not just specific to any one kind of gender or demographic, it's just across the board people have a lot of back pain. So let's talk about this, and we have this open forum, so we're going to make this a little bit kind of conversational, but we have some people in our group that have back pain, so I'm going to bring them up and we're going to have kind of conversation around it. So how about you want to come up here, Luisa? And we'll just talk about your situation, because everybody's situation is actually quite different and unique, and that's the important thing to realize, but at the same time there are certain principles that you can apply to everybody. So we're going to get you to sit in like a seated staff pose. Good. Okay, so first of all, tell us what's going on with your back. Like, where do you feel this pain?
Well, it starts in my upper back, but it's very intense in my lower back, and I feel like a shooting pain going down my hamstrings sometimes.
Okay, so basically it's starting in her upper back. She's getting a lot of spasms here. It's translating to having lower back, and then that's giving her shooting pain, which sounds like a sciatic nerve being pinched. So anytime anybody describes this, I have a shooting pain down my leg, it's typically a nerve is being pinched, and it's very likely it's the sciatic nerve. So you have the sciatic nerve, which goes underneath your glutes. And this is important because this is how you're going to learn how to help people. The muscle is over the nerve. And so if the muscle is really tight, or if the skeleton becomes out of alignment a little bit, and it pulls that muscle too much, and then it presses down on the nerve, and that's when you get this shooting pain, right? So that's why if you do certain stretches and manipulate the body in a certain way through the practice of yoga and Thai massage and some of the things that we're going to be talking about, that you can alleviate and eliminate this pain, because the main cause of it, the root of it, is this compression, the nerve pressing it, or the muscle pressing into the nerve. Does that sound like what's happening with you? Yeah. So this is very common, and we were just talking about that in general across the board, more common that men have this issue, but women and men both get it very, very often. But in the energetic realm, we find that the women tend to manifest it starting at the neck and upper back and shoulders, and then the men, it's sort of localized down here, and it doesn't always translate directly up here. And this is the reason I think this is. Energetically, think about this. Women operate more from their fifth chakra, right? Communication. Does this make sense? So women talk a lot, and then men, they don't really like talking that much, right? So it's kind of, if you've ever been around men for a while, you kind of realize they kind of want to talk less than women. So women are more vocal, and we also operate more from the heart, right? So does that make sense? That your upper back and neck is having some tension here, and we also feel like we're carrying the world on our shoulders sometimes, because a lot of women tend to multitask a lot. Does that make sense for your life a little bit? In some ways you're doing, juggling multiple things, and so you have this kind of like the tension gets stored here. So this is happening on the energetic level. Another reason this could be happening is maybe she's carrying her purse, let's say, a very heavy purse. Men don't carry purses. You see why this is like more commonly for women? Women carry a purse. Typically it's very heavy, and typically it's full of a lot of things that we don't really need, right? So that's the reason that a lot of times my clients in the past anyway, and a lot of my students, I've just suggested, hey, how about just get a little tiny purse, like a clutch, and get rid of this huge bag, and then that in itself starts to alleviate some of the pain. But I think what's happening with Luisa, because she mentioned already before that this is chronic, right? You were saying this happens after 3 accidents, and it comes back really intensely several times per year, right?
Yeah.
So the accidents you were in were car accidents, right?
2 car accidents and 1 motorbike accident.
Okay, 2 car accidents, 1 motorcycle accident. So I can relate to that because I've had a lot of car accidents. So what she's experiencing is at the top of the neck, right? She's had a lot of trauma. Okay, so anybody that's had a lot of trauma, they're going to need extra attention. So that's why we do the neck healing sequence, which I can go through with you. You want to go through that with me right now? Okay, so let's just have you turn forward. We'll do it together. So the neck healing sequence is where I like to start. But before we go into this, I want to also mention, because I also talked about this in the past, you remember when I brought up the Atlas Profilix therapy? So Atlas Profilix is a type of therapy that I discovered, and it's based, the training is from Switzerland, but there's not very many therapists in the world, so that's the biggest issue. There's only 12 in the United States. But if you can, I have one that I know about. If you can get with one, they can be very transformational. I think Tino can also be transformational for you because he's very similar. But basically the idea is that you have this bone on the top of your neck, right? Remember we talked about this, the atlas? So the atlas looks like this and it's got a hole in it. It's the only bone in your body that actually is a circle with a hole in it. So the nerve from the spinal column is coming through there, and it's coming up into your brain, right? So this is your spinal, like your nerve going through. And then if the atlas is at all out of alignment, it can pinch that nerve. So you see you might have 2 pinched nerves going on, right?
Yeah.
The one up here, and also her sciatica is both being pinched. That's why she has spasms in her upper back and neck. And then in the lower back, she's having also shooting pain, which is from that sciatic nerve. You see how this is really important? So the skeleton, the muscles, and the nerves are all being impinged, right? So the skeleton being out of alignment is, and sometimes the skeleton being out of alignment is caused by really tight muscles. So the muscle's really tight, which is pushing the bone out of place, or pulling it out of place. And then that, as a result of that, the bone is pressing into the nerve, and that's causing this shooting pain. So when she says that it only comes back several times a year, I think what's happening when it comes back for you, and you could just tell me if you think this is correct, I think what's happening is during those times, it's either a heightened state of increased activity, which makes sense for you, and also maybe increased stress of some level that's causing the muscles to pull the bone out and press into that nerve more. Makes sense, right? So of course, one of the great reliefs of this would be to just relieve some of your stress, right? So if you have less stress, of course, that's going to help. But then we got to get that bone back in place, right? That's the main thing because the bone's pushing into the nerve. So we have to align the skeleton. Now through the yoga practice, we've been really doing a lot of alignment practices. But if you have like what she's going through, which is a very specific issue, and then you go into a general yoga class, which is all levels and there's all sorts of intention, right? Maybe it's to work out, or maybe it's whatever, abs and stuff, but you're not focusing on your issue, right? You need something a little bit more targeted, more specific to you. So that's why I developed this neck healing series. So we're going to do this. Now the neck healing series is pretty much the main intention, you guys, is to loosen up the muscles around the neck and upper back. And then once those are a little bit looser, what we want to try to do is get the skeleton back in alignment. So if you don't have an Atlas Profilix therapist or a chiropractor to align that, we have some of our practices that we do, like when we do the neck decompression. Does that help you? It makes it feel a little better. With that, it actually has the potential to pull it fully back into place, depending on how loosened up you get the muscles around it to begin with, right? And in yoga, we have a principle that's called intrinsic equilibrium. You guys remember the intrinsic equilibrium? So intrinsic equilibrium is a really important concept that your body always wants to be in its natural, perfect alignment. And this is one of the questions on the exam for the teacher training. I'm giving you a free one. But ultimately, it's really valuable and important to know just from anybody, because if you understand that your body wants to be in perfect alignment, then as everything's pulling it out of alignment, your sole job here is to just make sure that you're not pulling yourself out of alignment all the time, right? And how does it pull it out of alignment? Things get tight in an imbalanced way. Let's talk about that for a second. So let's say Luisa's neck and her shoulder and upper back, right? Let's say she's like, I'm gonna do a one-hand handstand. I don't know, maybe, right?
Yeah, it might be.
Cool. But anyway, just think about that. Now, for advanced practitioners, this is no problem. But for somebody with neck and back pain, this would be a bad idea, I would say. So you're doing one-hand handstand. So all of the weight is on one side, and all the muscles on that side of the neck and shoulder are going to be really tight and engaged. And then let's say she's not a master of this yet, and then she falls and tweaks her neck. Like, this is how we pull ourselves out of alignment. We do asymmetrical activity, and this could be something as simple as carrying a purse. It doesn't have to be like you're doing an extreme thing like a one-handed handstand, but that you're like carrying a purse, or maybe you're carrying your groceries or your suitcase or a child. Whatever it is that you're lugging around is pulling you out of alignment on one side, and it always happens that if you pull yourself out of alignment on the one side, what do you think happens on the other side? The other side tries to compensate to create balance, so it pulls you out of alignment on the other side. So typically, let's say if your right shoulder and neck is being pulled out of alignment, your left hip is going to be a problem. And we'll talk about that in a minute when we get Jasmine up here. But let's talk about your hips and your lower back. Do you have one hip that's tighter than the other?
My right side.
Is it significantly tighter?
Yeah, it's a lot tighter than my left side.
Yeah. And so typically the reason for that is this neck thing, right? So it's like it's originating at the neck. One side is tighter, it's being pulled. So the body wants to be in balance, so it pulls the other way. So it's like this constantly like that. So we're always aiming to bring it back into a balance, right? So what we can do is, you have multiple dimensions that we would need to work on, right? But as a like client, I would say we want to work on your neck. We need to balance it out. We'll stretch it evenly, but if you have one side that's tighter than the other, you definitely want to focus on that, right? So for instance, let's just try this one for a second. Take your right hand to the top of your head by the left ear and lower your right ear to the right shoulder, and then feel that left side, and then extend the left hand out to the left, and you could even sit on that hand if you want, or however it makes for a nice deep stretch. And then press the shoulder down and away from the ear. So do you feel that pretty tight?
Yes.
Okay, then come back to the center and then switch sides and do the other side. And so you're just stretching through here. Now, which side feels tighter to you? Or do they feel kind of even?
Feel kind of the same.
Kind of the same on the side of the neck? Okay, so maybe side of the neck.
Maybe the right side feels a little tighter.
This side feels a little tighter. Now see if you can drop your chin down to the chest a little and feel through the back of this side. So we're looking at different sides of the neck. So the first one we did was just directly this side. Now we're going back of this side to see where the muscle tension is the tightest, right? Okay, is that pretty deep? You might even feel this into the lower, like into the shoulder blade. And then come back to the center. Do the same thing on the other side with the chin down to the chest. Good. You feel that in, which side's tighter for you?
Yeah, the right side is tighter.
Yep. Okay. So come back to the center. This is a very simple way to test it. But look, if you have one side that's tighter, what do you think that means that you should do? Maybe stretch that side a little more, right? So in general, we want to always create balance. So it's not that you always want to stretch the same amount of breaths on each side. You want to stretch until the pain goes away. That would be the optimal practice, right? Not so much like, oh, I got my 5 breaths in, time for the other side. If you were doing your practice at home, I would suggest you spend a little bit more time on this side. Maybe you do 10 breaths on this side and you roll through a few more, trajectories of the muscle. That way we can loosen up this side. We're really aiming to get balance more than 5 breaths on each side. Make sense?
Yeah.
So even when you're in a class, you can also do that. Like even if they're instructing, all right, do the next side, spend a little extra time on your tighter side. Same thing with the hip, right? So she's talking about her right hip is very tight. So when you're in a class, generally we're giving the instruction that you do the same amount of breaths on both sides, which is good, but at the same time, like most people are imbalanced here. So if one hip is tighter, you actually want to spend more time on that side. That's how you're going to have a breakthrough. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay, so ultimately, just for your own personal practice and when you're at home, I would sometimes, you could even just do the right side only that day and notice if now they're starting to feel evened out. better to let the left side hang out and just chill for a while so that this one can catch up than to continually stretch this one all the time, and then this one, it can never catch up, right? If you're always doing the same amount on both sides and this one's always tighter. So it's like the little stepchild, like, come on, you can do it. Like, you got to give it more attention. So the interesting thing, now that we know, so the right hip and the right side of the neck is both her tighter side. This is interesting because typically it's contralateral. So let's talk about your shoulder. When you do shoulder stretches like this one, try interlace your fingers down and back. Which side feels tighter here?
The right side.
The right, significantly? Okay, then let's try this one. Right arm up and bend it. Can you bind with this?
On this side I can, but not on the other.
Not on the left side. Okay, so watch how this goes.
Okay,
so she can bind on this side. So the front of this shoulder is open. Now try the left side. The left side
bring this back.
is difficult because her shoulder here is very tight on the right side. She can just reach, but it's very tight and she can feel that. So you see how this is happening? But the interesting thing with you, Luisa, is that it's all on the right side, which actually through my experience with so many students, it's typically contralateral, meaning one shoulder means opposite hip. But for her, it's the same side. So because it was a car accident, right, a trauma that was from impact, this is important to also know the root of what happened. Like, let's say as an example, have you guys ever known anybody who had like neck pain, but they weren't in any car accidents or anything, they just have this chronic neck pain? There's other reasons why you would get it, and that would lead to a different experience, right? So if you're just getting neck pain because you have a bad pillow, right, or like you sleep on your stomach and your neck is always kind of like this, then these are the reasons why somebody might have neck pain, but it may not be associated with the hips and things like that as much. It's just kind of localized. Whereas you had a huge trauma impact to your whole body, right? It was like whiplash, and then what else happened?
It was really bad. Like, first accident, stretched out my ligaments and I herniated tooth on my disc in my neck. And I couldn't even move out of the car. They had to come and get me on a board and wrap me and take me to the hospital for a week.
For a week? Okay, wow. She was in the hospital for a week after this accident, you guys. So this is a huge trauma, you know. So first of all, her body, when you get into a trauma like an accident, your body actually freezes up, and it does this to protect you, right? Because it doesn't want to get hurt anymore, so it kind of like shrinks in. And so all the ligaments, what happened with her is they all, she says, got stretched out. And so the ligaments are, remember, and this is on the exam too, the ligaments connect bone to what? Muscles. Bone to muscles. So the ligaments connect bones to muscles. What do the tendons connect? You guys, you remember? Tendons? Bones to bone, remember? Okay. So basically, important information, but see, hers got stretched out, so now the muscles shrank back. You see how that's different? You can have really stretched out ligaments, but the muscles around that area became very tight. Does that make sense, you guys? Mm-hmm. It's because something is trying to hold this neck in place. It's like, we don't want to be injured anymore. And the other thing is, her body has intelligence, so it wants to actually stabilize your neck because it knows very clearly your head is very important. It houses your brain. Brain is very important. We have to hold this neck in place, right? So the ligaments got all stretched out. So the muscles came in and says, I'm going to save the day. I'm going to shrink in and tighten up, right? And so that's what's also happening here. So all of this is trying to stabilize her neck until she can get that the relief, which is healing, which is taking time, I think. How long has it been? 3 years, you said?
The last accident was 3 years ago. First one, 12 years ago.
Okay, so 12 years ago was the first one, and then the last one was 3 years ago. So it's a good thing. Like, you're actually 3 years since your last one, and you're on a good direction. You know, you've been doing yoga every day. You've been doing really well. But as you can, after she had recently some healing therapy, and it really brought to light the tension in your lower back now. So let's talk about that. So Luisa is a good, important example, you guys, because she's dealing with multiple levels of this issue. And this is very common. So most people don't even realize what's going on. She is at least super aware. She has a lot of body awareness and a lot of patience, you know, and just So she's dealing with it, but she's not making a big deal about it. Most people who are in pain, they project their pain on everyone, and they're kind of like making everyone miserable around them. So the beautiful thing is she's not doing that. So this is like a really beautiful way to deal with it. But ultimately, if you're having pain in your body, you want to try to find a solution to get rid of it, right? So that's what we're here for. So let's talk a little bit more, and then we'll do some practices. So we're gonna, we talked about the neck. Now we're gonna do some neck stretches. That's our first idea, right? We want to do that. And the other thing we want to do is decompress the neck to release. And what do we do when we're decompressing the cervical spine, you guys?
Make space.
Creating space, right? So we have the vertebra, and they're all lined up on the neck, and then they have these little, like a little bit of cartilage in between, right? And so as the head is pressing down on the body, like just from gravity alone, this is happening, then it's compressing, and all the vertebrae are kind of like getting pushed into each other. And so what we're doing when we decompress, which I'll show that technique on her in a second, is that we're just creating a little bit of space. And when you create that kind of space, what you're also doing is you're allowing for some of the muscles to loosen up a bit, and for the nerves to maybe hopefully get unpinched and things like that. So this is possible. It's a very simple technique you could do yourself, but it could result in an unpinching of a nerve. So it's a way to kind of get yourself back into alignment on a very basic level. If it doesn't work, it means that you need more, right? So like, okay, it means that the muscles are too tight to allow for the proper alignment to take place. So you got to keep going into, stretching, and then also massage. So massage is also like a complementary, essential practice for someone like you. You know, massage goes in, and it actually, like with someone else's hand, moves the muscles out of the way so they can loosen themselves up, so the spine can be in its harmony, right, in its intrinsic equilibrium, and so you can unpinch nerves and things like that. So muscles combined with the yoga is the best approach to what she's experiencing, and she would also probably benefit, like I said, from the Atlas Profilix or something like Rolfing, or what we've been doing here in Bali, which is working with Tino, our Balinese healer friend, and basically he's doing the same thing, right? He's kind of like, he's like moving the muscles out of the way so that the spine can be in one line, and that any disruption or any pinching that's happening along the spine can be alleviated. So it takes time when you have so many different levels of things that's going on. But you see, this is compounded over 12 years. Does that make sense, you guys? It's not like she just woke up, has all these things going on. It's possible that could happen. After one accident, the next day you could wake up and have all this pain. But because she's been in so many car accidents, and because it's been over a period of 12 years, it's actually gotten, I would say, compounded. So compounding is when one trauma happens, and then the next one happens on top of it, and the next one, right? So now you're working on layers of trauma. So we have to like peel away the layers of trauma so that we can, get to the Luisa that she remembers, right? Like awesome, no back pain, Luisa. So that's available to you, I believe 100%, and you're on the right path with the yoga and everything. And so it's just a matter of staying with it, because that's one of the most important things I can suggest to anybody with back pain, is that you have to be consistent and stay with it. In the beginning, it's very painful and uncomfortable and unpleasant and unenjoyable. Even the massages can be unenjoyable sometimes. But you have to be able to breathe through that, because what you're doing is, during that pain of the therapy, you're releasing the trauma that's stored in your cells and that's stored in the very muscles and tendons and bones even, And so you have to release that trauma, and that's why it's painful even when you're getting the therapy, okay? Let's talk a little bit more about her upper back. So what happens after we just talked about the neck. Now we see how it's translated to the shoulders. How do you feel in your upper back when you do back bending and stuff like that?
It feels tight. It feels tight, and once in a while I get spasming, like right in the middle.
Spasming.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you guys remember we talked about this. When you have spasming, what does this mean? You remember? It means that the nerve is being pinched, right? You never just have, there's another reason you might have muscle spasms, which is sometimes like mineral imbalances, right? Have you guys ever noticed that? Like if you have somebody doing a stretch, as an example, this one seems to cause a lot of muscle spasms. When you have someone pull this leg in and like for some reason they're like, oh, my calf is spasming. So in general, sometimes people will go into spasm. Typically, muscle spasm is linked to mineral imbalances. So potassium and some of those minerals, they can help, magnesium especially, to relax the muscles more. So, and also hydration. So just on like the nutritional side, this is also very helpful. And so if you're dealing with this, those types of things will help to support your healing process as well. Very important to kind of take a combination approach. You guys see this? So it's not just like, oh, she has neck pain, go get a massage. It's going to work itself out, right? That's not the way. You have to look at it like multi-dimensional approach, and then you're going to see the results that are long-lasting. So we have the neck. We talked about the upper back, but she's also potentially having spasming because all of the muscles in the neck are so tight. The shoulder is tight here, especially on the right side. So in the center of the spine, the muscles also shrink in to try to stabilize the neck. Everything in her body is trying to stabilize her neck. Why do you think that would be? The body knows the neck is the most important thing because it's holding on the head, right? This is like where everything happens. If you go brain dead, what happens? You're not living anymore. So we have to, like everything in this upper body region is working very hard to make sure that your head is stable and safe, right? And so she's had all these traumas, so now her body doesn't necessarily trust that she'll be safe. The body actually has memory of this trauma, so it will actually think we could become in a trauma again at any moment. So it's always in this state of kind of shrinking back to brace against the potential of another trauma happening. Does that make sense, you guys? Right? Okay. So then we'll talk a little bit about her lower back. So now you see how it's kind of like all building onto each other. So we had the neck, we had the shoulder, we have the upper back, and now the lower back, right? And then her hip. So how does it feel in your lower back? Like what is your experience?
Tightness, sometimes like a burning sensation going down my hamstring. Sometimes goes to the front of my leg. And it reflects to the left side. Yeah.
So she's saying it's tight, there's a burning sensation, sometimes a pain down the front of the leg, and then sometimes it just goes all the way to the left side too. But primarily it's on the right. So, okay, so if you think about the spine, which I wish I had like a picture of it so you could see, but you have the spine, and then all these muscles which are tight on the neck and the shoulder and the upper back, pulling everything out of place, will that translate directly to the lower back? So, and also because she had impact, she may have had impact to the lower back as well. But even if she didn't have this type of impact to her lower back, it may translate to the same type of pain because the spine, like we talked about, wants to be in intrinsic equilibrium, so it wants to be in perfect alignment. Because the top is out of alignment, the bottom is pulling itself out of alignment to try to create some sort of balance, right? So if this side is whatever is happening up here, at the bottom there's always going to be like something happening as well because the top and the bottom are very connected. That's why they have this therapy called cranial sacral. They connect the crown with the sacrum, and they show how the two ends are always communicating to each other, and that when there's trauma in the body, there's typically an imbalance at both ends. So you can work the lower or the upper. Different philosophies believe differently. Some believe that you should always work from atlas, and when you straighten the atlas, then everything else below that will straighten itself out. And I've experienced that in my own body. Like for instance, the reason for this is what they call the atlas the mouth of God. Have you guys heard that term? So the mouth of God, if you think about this on a spiritual level, it's a very important thing, right? Just like your connection to source. And so if you can connect or straighten out, your connection with source, everything else starts to fall into place. Does this make sense, right? If you're feeling like always just connected with divine love, then the body goes, and it relaxes into place. So what we want to do through the practice of yoga and also the healing of this trauma is also self-love practice, really like doing the spiritual practice necessary so that you feel that support. Okay. Okay, we're going to start from here because I don't know where it stopped. It might have stopped an hour ago. So would you? Yeah, thank you. Okay, so we're just going to demonstrate with Luisa. She's going to show us how to decompress her spine. Really quick, let's do it again. So interlace your fingers. Now bringing your elbows together under the chin, we want to create space by pressing the head away from the body. And if you think about that, she has her cervical spine here, all the little vertebrae lined up. What we're doing is we're just tractioning it, right? So that's really a valuable thing for anybody to learn how to do, but the most important thing for her, because she's having all of this neck pain and it's translating into the lower back. So doing that for just a little bit, and if she can get really good at this to relax while it's happening, she can press the head away from the body, and you may even hear a little popping. Have you guys heard that, where you go, it's so good in the morning, and then take the hands to the back of the head and draw the forehead into the shins, and then you're going to feel the lengthening, right? So all the way along through the cervical, thoracic, and even maybe down into the lumbar and the sacral area. She's going to feel a nice deep spinal stretch, right? So this is such a good thing for someone like Luisa to do every single morning. I also do this before bed. So any time in the day, if you're feeling a little bit tight, this is really important and can help you in the therapeutic healing process. But we'll just let her stay there for a little bit. How does it feel?
Feels good.
You like this one, right? Okay, good. And then just drop the hands down to the floor. So in this position, do you feel any pain? No, good. Okay, so she's in the standing forward bend. Now let's see if you can straighten your knees. When you straighten the knees, what happens? Do you feel any pain?
I just feel tightness.
Just a hamstring stretch?
And in my lower back too.
In the lower back. So she's just first thing in the morning here. So this might be one of the reasons. Is she's just feeling like morning tightness, which is normal. But sometimes you can feel this way even after a whole yoga class, which is not what you want. You don't want to get to the end of a 90-minute yoga class and feel like tightness all over the place, or in your back especially, right? So you want to make sure that you're doing the practice that's right for your body at the timing that you need it, right? So let's just, we'll try another one. So this is a really good practice for anybody because it's very gentle. And you noticed when she had her knees bent, she was saying it didn't hurt at all. Does it feel good on your lower back? Yeah, good. Okay, so then let's try another option. We'll just come into extended forward bend. So just straightening the spine and lifting the chest a little bit, tilting the tailbone back. Now how does this feel?
Feels okay.
Feels good, right? It's because, you know, when we don't have the back rounded here, then we're activating the muscles a little bit more, and then we're not potentially straining anything, right? Now fold forward again. And we're going to step your left foot back and come into a low lunge. So you can come up onto the mat a bit. Good. Drop the knee down. And so just stay here for a second. Now when we have a low lunge, what we're looking to do here is we're opening the right hip a bit, but we're also going to be stretching out the front of the left hip flexor. But at the same time, we have a potential for some back pain to be aggravated depending on her situation. So first of all, how do you feel with your hands down? Feels good. Now lift the chest. Okay. Now when you start to radiate the hips forward and open the front of the left hip flexor, how does it feel here? You feel the front of the hip stretching. She feels a compression, a little tightness in her lower back. Okay, let's try reaching her arms up. Good. And then tuck the tailbone under a little bit. Lengthen here and see if you can arch back just a little bit. How does this feel? Do you feel pain anywhere? No, good. Okay, come back down, palms down. Good. Now we're going to take the right leg into pigeon. So just slide your right foot to the left and lower down. So you notice we're doing the right hip side because that's the side she said was the tighter side. So we want to stretch that out more, right? So if we're only going to do one side, might as well do her tight side. Okay, good. So now she's in pigeon. And she's actually really flexible in this position, meaning like she's able to get her hips down. A lot of people are all like uneven and their hips are up, and that's a sign that it's super tight. She's not that tight, but she's feeling the pain. You can be very flexible and still have pain and still have tightness. So don't be deceived by anybody that looks like they're super advanced and then they could be having some experience of pain. So let's just talk about this. How does it feel?
I just feel this stretching and very intense here.
Good. So this is one of the best poses for you. Do you do this one a lot? Yeah. This is one of the best poses for people who have sciatic pain because it stretches the glutes and it stretches the hip. And then also a little bit the lower back. But this is basically the main region that's her problem, right? This is where she's having her pain. So we want to loosen up the glutes, the muscles, and then we want to also open up the hip. And so if I was working with her one-on-one, I would also, during this pose for her, I would give her like a little bit of a massage because this can help to loosen it up as well, especially if it's in an aggravated state. So like right now, she's not too bad. She's not like having spasms or anything. So she's like in a medium state. So she's not aggravated. But you can just give her a little bit massage here. And then come back up. We're going to come back to your palms and we'll demonstrate another thing. So then see if you can reach back, bend your back knee, reach back for your foot. Good. And then pull this in. How does this feel on the right side? It's okay, right?
Yeah, it's okay.
Pull the foot in as close as you can. Does that aggravate your lower back at all? No. Good. Okay. So she's actually been, she's also actually a little bit advanced with yoga. So for some people, this can cause a back spasm. And so you're doing really well. I'm really happy to know that that's not hurting. What about the shoulder?
Feels tight.
Feels tight, but it's first thing in the morning. Could be the reason. But not spasming or anything, right?
No.
Okay, release. Good. And then lower the foot. Now I'm going to show you another option that I would suggest. You're going to step back into downward dog. A really good option for someone like her would be to, in between downward dog if she can, bend the knees, and press the chest towards the thighs here. So she's really opening up the upper back and shoulders during her downward dog practice. And she can do the regular downward dog with the legs straight as well. But for her, what we really want to do is focus on alleviating tension in the upper back and shoulders. So this is like a really nice therapeutic version of downward dog that I like to suggest to a lot of my students. And then straighten the knees and feel the difference. And if it's available to someone, one option I like to give them, even if she bend her elbows a little bit, you could even step your feet back towards the back of the mat just a little more. If she could, drop her head, she could do the forearms too, but I was going to say, just dropping the crown of the head to the mat. Now, not compressing the neck, but just letting the crown just rest there, right? And then she can press back more through the chest without using so much muscular strength, right? We're just kind of like, the head is like a third arm, but not putting any pressure. You feel that? Your neck is fine, right? And then pressing the chest back like this. So we're working on opening up the shoulders and upper back, but not pushing too hard, right? And then we have a neutral spine here at the lower back. So she's not rounded, which is really good. And the tailbone is tilting up. So we have a nice open spine, and then the heels are pressing down. So now she can open up the back of the hamstrings as well. And then drop down to the knees and walk the hands forward a bit and just come into Anahata. So this is the other one I always give people as an option for the upper back. And what I like about this as well is notice the curve on the lower back. So this is a very gentle back bend, you guys, as far as the lower back is concerned. You're not going to feel a lot of compression at the lower back here, which is really the most important thing. For somebody that has back pain, you don't want to give them any poses that's going to compress their lower back, because that's just making it worse and it can aggravate it even more. And especially for someone like her who has like an imbalance where one side is a lot tighter than the other and things like that. You want to make sure that you do things that are symmetrical stretches for her during when you're going to do long holds, unless you're just working the right side, because then you're going to balance it out. How does that feel on your back? You like this pose?
I love it.
It's the best pose, right? Sometimes I do this pose like 30 minutes. This pose is great. You can have a huge breakthrough with this pose. It's yin pose, meaning like it's very gentle and feminine and relaxing. It allows you to surrender your heart, which is a very healing practice for your life, but also for letting go of traumas. And so it's the heart chakra, but then we're also working the upper back and the shoulders. So her shoulder, which is tighter on the right side, especially when she has her arm in the extended position like this is opening that up. You feel it more on the right side? Yeah, so she feels it more on that tighter side, but she'll have a breakthrough with this eventually. And if I was working with Luisa one-on-one, I would just take my hand and just massage down the side of her shoulder like this. It's so nice, right? It's so good to massage someone while they're in a stretch. This is where you're going to get the deepest healing. And so during, like when I would do a lot of private Thai massage clients, I would love to do this to people because it creates like a expediting healing effect, right? You want to try to combine therapies. That will expedite the healing. Okay, so she's doing great, and I would, like I said, I would suggest if she was at her house, she could do this pose like 10 to 30 minutes, you know, and if she can really get into it and just some nice relaxing music and melting the heart into the earth and just surrendering and maybe even invoking a mantra of release, she can have some huge progress with this pose specifically. Okay, you ready to come out of it though? We're going to place the hands under the shoulders, and then I would counter pose this with rabbit pose. You remember rabbit pose? Yeah. So you're going to come onto the if you want to come into cat pose for a second, just to counter cat pose around the spine. We're going to counter the pose with cat pose just to balance it out for a second. And then we're going to go into another counter pose, which is a little bit deeper. Coming onto the forearms here, interlace the fingers, elbows are shoulder distance, place the crown of the head between your arms, and roll the chin into the chest. So the chin is really rolled in here and all the way into the lower back even. And how she can control the stretch is by lifting the hips and rolling the chin in towards her chest even more. So this is a wonderful pose for people with neck and back pain and of all sizes, because everybody can do this pose. And the most important thing is that she stays stable, keeps the head straight, and just breathing into the back of the neck and shoulders and upper back area. Another option to take it a little deeper, if I was doing one-on-one with her, I would do this for her and I would just try to loosen up her shoulders with my massage here. But otherwise you can, if you have a group class, you would just instruct that the hands come to the shoulders and you can do your own massage, right? So see if you can find your shoulders, find a couple tight places and use a little acupressure, just press into your own shoulders to loosen up the neck and shoulders. So this is a really valuable way that you can teach people how to heal themselves, right? This is a really beautiful thing. We can heal ourselves. I mean, ideally we want to have a combination approach. So we want to have healers helping and we want to help ourselves. And we want to keep going until we're healed. And as long as you're having pain, keep going, right? And then when the pain is gone, that means that you're successful in this healing process. So she did her little massage on her neck, and then she can stay here as long as she feels comfortable, but I wouldn't stay all day, you know, just like maybe a minute or so. If she can handle it a little longer is fine. And then a good counter pose for this is to come up to seated, and she could do, so coming into a seated Sukhasana position where you're sitting cross-legged, hands to the knees, and just lift the chest and shoulders down and back. A little arch back. If it's comfortable, you could lay your head back. Let me see. How far can you lay your head back? Like that? Does it feel okay? Mm-hmm. Okay. And then rounding the spine, chin into the chest, and then press the spine back. Inhale, lift the heart. We're going to do 2 more times. Exhale, round the spine, chin into the chest. Once more. Inhale. And exhale. Chin into the chest. So what we're doing is we're kind of countering that pose. We're creating more flow here, resetting the spine. We'll come back to the center. And then what we'll do is I'm going to do the next series with Jasmine, but what we would do with her is that we would take her through the neck healing series and then probably a few more positions, you know, for the lower back, which I'm going to do on the next demonstration model. But how do you feel right now? Do you feel that these practices can help you?
Of course.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What you have to do is, do them, right? Yeah. How often do you think you should do them?
Every day.
Every day. Imagine if you did every day this practice. Now, this is the key though. The rest of your day, you have to be very aware of your movements, right? So like if you're, like I said, carrying groceries up a lot of stairs with one arm, or having lifting a baby, or, you know, whatever it is that you're doing, if you're counter productive to your healing practice, you're just throwing yourself back out, right?
Yeah.
So like the awareness outside of your therapy is the most important thing, because that's the other 23 hours in the day. So how you're sleeping, how you're carrying yourself, your posture, the stress levels, your nutrition, everything like that is going to support the healing process. And if you can bring it all together and make your lifestyle a healing experience, then you're going to expedite the process so much more, right? And so you're doing a wonderful job. Thank you for your help. Namaste.